Welcome to another edition of Rick and Bubba University, the podcast. If you follow the podcast weekly, we've been on a bit of a hiatus because of the holiday. So it's good to have a brand new Rick and Bubba University today. And Bubba, on the weekly show, this topic has bounced around, then it kind of goes away, then it comes back. The state of the Democratic Party, no one that wants to be able to look at themselves in the mirror believes that Joe Biden is able to run and win and then serve another 4 years unless they're living in some sort of la-la land. So the question has been building, what is the plan? Who are they going to bring forward? Joel Gilbert is our guest today on Rick and Bubba University, the podcast. Joel has a very strong opinion about this. And it's a name that's very familiar to all of us, and we've discussed it, and that name is Michelle Obama. Joel is the author of Michelle Obama 2024, her real life story and plan for power, and director of the documentary Michelle Obama 2024. He has an incredible resume of other documentaries that he has done, and he joins us on Rick and Bubba University, the podcast. Joel, welcome.
Okay, great to be here today. Thank you.
And Joel, the timing of this couldn't be more on, because we've heard rumors about this for a long time, and boom, here we are, and it looks like we're ready for a July surprise.
Well, I think so. I've had this, it's a film and a book version out for about a year called Michelle Obama 2024. And I make the case that observing Michelle Obama, she's actually copying everything that Barack did before he ran for president. Barack had a voter registration organization in Chicago called Project Vote. Sure enough, Michelle started about 4 years ago her organization called When We All Vote, and she runs around the country registering people to vote, for Democrats, of course. Barack was the keynote speaker who introduced John Kerry at the 2004 Democrat convention. There was Michelle Obama in 2020, the keynote speaker introducing Joe Biden. And, of course, Barack wrote 2 autobiographies, including his best-selling Dreams from My Father. Michelle wrote 2 autobiographies, including Becoming and The Light We Carry. They're also both on Netflix, huge bestsellers. So I'm seeing that she really positioned herself for the nomination, and I think it's no coincidence that there are strong forces trying to push Joe Biden out at this moment, including people that hung him out to dry by scheduling a June debate of all things, right, so that people could see that he's really not capable. So I feel strongly that it's coming. Michelle's the only viable candidate for the Democrats that is polling ahead of Trump right now, and I think she's the plan.
Joel, do you think this was the plan all along, or do you think this is a convenient answer for Joe Biden going downhill even quicker than the Democrats who were who were trying to hide him?
Well, officially, the Democrats are saying, many of them are saying, well, we want to make sure we can win. They're not saying we want to make sure we have a president who can govern effectively. They just admitting on the one hand that they don't think Biden can win and he'll drag down the rest of the ticket. Governors, congressmen, senators, all the way throughout the country. That's their official position. I think in reality, their concern is that if they push Joe Biden over the top again with mail-in voters, with ballot harvesting, here in California, they send out 22 million ballots to every single home, every apartment in the state, and there's drop boxes on every corner, and you don't know who filled out the ballots or who voted. There's no way to audit it. So I think they're afraid that Joe Biden is not plausible as a winner. They could probably push him over the top, but no one would believe it. So they need someone who brings plausibility. And Michelle Obama is very popular. She's got 100 million social media followers. She's the most popular person in the country, hundreds of magazine covers and interviews. So if she wins, people would say, well, I guess I believe it because she's so popular.
Yeah, we've discussed this on the show, and a lot of times the audience doesn't, I don't think, like to hear it. But we've been very frank, and I think you feel the same way based on the things that we have been following from you. If she runs, she wins. And so the concern is if you're someone, and we've done it, who keeps pointing to the obvious issues with Biden, how are we letting this guy govern? If this is not Amendment 25, what is? Should we be careful? are they going to get rid of him no matter what we do?
I think they're going to get rid of him. Now, I point out in my film and book, Michelle Obama 2024, that she's not an automatic winner. She's very vulnerable if people knew her real story.
Right. That's
now,
the
Michelle,
key.
Yeah, now she's been pushing for years, saying that she's from the South Side of Chicago and she's suffered discrimination in her life and was held back in life because of her race. And I'm just one of these ordinary black folks, just like everybody else. Turns out that's completely false. Michelle's not from the South Side of Chicago. She's from South Shore, which was an exclusive community on Lake Michigan. Michelle had a terrible relationship with the black community in Chicago growing up. Her and her brother refused to go to high school with other black kids 1 block from their house. They both went to all white schools like an hour away. Michelle got beat up. She even writes in her book about getting beat up by the other black girls, would call her an Oreo, which is a racial slur. It means you're white, you're black on the outside, but you're really a white girl on the inside. Michelle says she was afraid to go out of her house because the black kids would beat her up. So Michelle had a horrible relationship growing up with the black community, no black friends. And I chronicle in her career in Chicago, Michelle exploited the black community. When white liberals were having problems with the black community on the South Side, they couldn't hire a white person to exploit them. So Michelle would do the dirty work. Michelle took those jobs and made millions of dollars working for the mayor of Chicago. She kicked 20,000 blacks out of the projects at Cabrini Green. She knocked down their homes and said, it's going to be good for you. Then working for the University of Chicago Medical Center, Michelle's job was to kick black people out of the emergency room and deny them access to health care. If you were black and showed up, Michelle would put you in a van and dump you back on the South Side in some clinic in some crappy strip mall.
Wow.
And Michelle told the black community, this is going to be good for you. This is good for you. So she denied access to health care to the black community. She kicked them out of their homes. And she sold them out for money. And black voters don't like to be sold out. They don't like someone that sells them out. And that's why Michelle has pushed these phony stories for years to manipulate black and minority voters into thinking, hey, I'm just one of you, when in fact she's someone that exploited them and sold them out. And if I was Donald Trump and Michelle was running against me, I would give her the nickname of phony Michelle Obama.
Yep.
And I would highlight what she did to sell out the black community, because the black voters don't like to be sold out, and that's Michelle's biggest weakness.
Joel, are you from the camp? Do you believe that the first Biden term in office has really just been an extension of the Obama term? Do you feel like he's still calling the shots?
Yeah, there's no question. It's public, but it's what we've known for years, that Biden was intended to and has all this time just been a figurehead. He's there in the White House on Monday afternoon, Tuesday and Wednesday. He signs executive orders and gives a couple speeches with a teleprompter and reads some note cards, and he goes on vacation to Delaware 3 or 4 days a week. So he's never really been in charge. It's a group of people, I think, led by Barack Obama, because about 90% of Biden's staff are from the Obama administration. Right. Obama never left Washington like most presidents. He bought a house. And I know that he consults regularly and still is the head of the Democrat Party. So there's no question, I think Obama has been calling the shots and Biden has just been a figurehead. And there are certain people that would be happy for themselves to be able to exercise the office of the president into the next term with Biden as a figurehead. But I think they realize that it's no longer plausible that Biden could win the election.
Do you think the nuts and bolts of that was going through Susan Rice, who I know was the former ambassador for Obama, but she actually had a position and an office in the White House and has been accused of being the pipeline, if you would, to Obama. And when that kind of got out and got some legs, I noticed she resigned that position.
Well, yeah, Susan Rice is definitely on Team Obama, as well as many others, but she actually held a position which was liaison for domestic policy. So to me, it was clear she was controlling domestic policy through Obama. And she quit one day after Biden announced that he was running for re-election a year ago in April. And I thought that was very curious. That told me that Biden was not necessarily completely under control and was not cooperating, because the plan from the get-go, even Biden said, hey, I'm a transitional president. I'm just going to be in the office for one term, and then I'm going to hand it off to the next generation. That was the plan. And I think Biden's stubbornness and his wife and everyone else around him probably having too good of a time and said, well, yeah, let's just keep this thing going. So you can see Team Obama, I think, now is fighting back.
And I think we're seeing that. We'll take a quick break and we'll come back. I want to ask you some questions because right now, watching it and then seeing what you researched on Michelle Obama, it's almost like the Democratic Party itself, which in the past have been very, very good at all staying on the same narrative and on the same page. And you're watching that change right now with some real influential people like the George Clooney op-ed that came out this week. And we're going to ask you about that and a couple of other items when Rick and Bubba University, the podcast, continues right after this.
This is the Rick and Bubba Show. Watch more at blazetv.com/Rick and Bubba. Rick and Bubba, Rick and Bubba.
Our guest today on Rick and Bubba University, the podcast, is Joel Gilbert, the author of Michelle Obama 2024, her real life story and plan for power, and the documentary Michelle Obama 2024. So, Joel, you made some great points. A couple of things I want to ask you about. So, you felt like this was the plan since 2016 even, for her to eventually be the president. Biden was supposed to be transitional. I think you're 100% right that they've gotten in, and Jill and Hunter and all of his brothers, they love if being senator is one thing, being vice president's another. Being the president is just too good a dish to give up, and it's causing what looks like when you have someone like George Clooney, who tells everybody how much he loves Joe Biden, holds a fundraiser that got right at $30 million, and said that interaction with him caused him now to say that Biden must be replaced. Is this now what you have already been telling everybody? They're going to some big hitters now going, we cannot let him go forward. Is this a genuine thing, or is this just a move to a new plan?
Well, first of all, imagine you're one of the donors that put in $30 million a couple of weeks ago. And then George Clooney, hey, George, why didn't you tell us before the fundraiser? You know?
Right.
I think Team Obama is slowly escalating the message to Biden and Joe Biden and Jill and Hunter that they need to move on. And you see certain escalation starting with the New York Times editorial board, you know, George Clooney, other politicians are slowly escalating. I think they have enough information on Joe and Hunter and others that they cannot withstand an onslaught that would demand that he would step down, including the recordings from her interviews and tapes. I don't think he can withstand it. So I think Team Biden is leveraging a little bit to try to make sure they get what they want, which might be pardons, which might be allowing Joe to stay in office and not resign. So it's going to be pretty interesting what happens in the next week, but I don't think Biden is going to possibly survive it. I think in the meantime, there's even more danger to the country because Hunter Biden is now the new chief of staff.
Wow.
You could argue that he's kind of the acting president of the United States because Joe is so incapable. And you just wonder if Joe Biden will come out and legalize cocaine. Say, where did that come from? Because I'm joking, but Hunter is probably in control of the office of the president right now.
Wow. Do you think, as it has been portrayed since the poor performance in the debate, that maybe Jill Biden is the driving force wanting him to stay?
Well, I wrote an article in 2020 before the 2020 election in American Thinker. The title was "The Answer is Jill Biden." That's the title of the article, because to me, it was clear from early on, she was the one who desperately wanted to be in the White House. Don't forget, she divorced her husband way back, having an affair with Senator Joe Biden, and married him with the idea that she'd be first lady one day. I think it's been her lifelong goal, as much or more so than Joe Biden. And she clearly is someone that loves the trappings of the office of the first lady. And she even called it a lifestyle. She was on The View. She said, politics for us is a lifestyle. They said, why are you running? Joe is so old. This is 2020. Joe is so old and he has trouble putting sentences together. Why don't you just retire? And Jill said, well, for me, it's a lifestyle. So she loves that lifestyle. And I think she is the driving force.
Yeah, Joel, some of my family members were in Georgetown and witnessed her coming on a shopping trip. And boy, they shut the roads down. You can't walk by. It's the full entourage when she comes to shop. So you can't help but enjoy that to some degree. I would like to think that none of us would be that vain, but I think it is something that is desired, something that you enjoy, something that you want to keep going, not end, right?
Look, Jill Biden was the wife of the vice president for 8 years. It seemed to me she was seething in jealousy because she'd been in politics since the 1970s with Joe, and here came the Obamas out of Chicago. All of a sudden, I think she didn't like being, in the vice president's role. But she recently, I think about a year ago, had the Marine Band write a special song that they could play instead of Hail to the Chief. Whenever the First Lady was introduced, they'd play her a special song. So you have all these family members around Biden that think that they're the president, Jill, Hunter,
Right.
and they enjoy that position very much, and they don't want to give it up. But I think there's enough forces aligning against them that they will be giving it up. And I'm convinced that the only viable candidate that they have in mind is going to be Michelle Obama.
And you also mentioned, even your own party. There's just so much baggage on the Bidens because they have been there so long, and
50 years,
and they've been so corrupt. If the Democrats want to do them in, as you noted, they have plenty of ammunition to do so. Let me ask you about this, since you know so much about Michelle Obama and you've done your research. That's very obvious. We have talked to others on the podcast that share your same view that she would be a great candidate for the Democrats if they can keep this stuff down that you mentioned. But they said she has a little issue with a work ethic, that she doesn't really like to work hard, and they're saying that that she may not.
The long hours, constantly under the microscope.
Is that accurate or inaccurate based on your research?
I mean, not really. Look, Michelle came out of Harvard. She got a job at a very competitive law firm, Sidley and Austin, for a couple of years. By the way, where she worked there was friends with Bernardine Dorn, the 1960s terrorist who she befriended.
Wow.
That's where Michelle got all her anti-American rhetoric from when she gave those nasty anti-American speeches in 2008, straight out of the mouth of Bernardine Dorn, an anti-American terrorist that was her friend. People don't know how close they were. Michelle worked for years. Public Allies was a radical training organization to train people for the deep state to get into the bureaucracies, and she would train people how to get into the bureaucracy and overturn the government from within. Michelle was a community organizer for 3 years, just like Barack. People don't know that. She worked for the mayor of Chicago, so she's done a lot of 9-to-5 jobs, including the University of Chicago Medical Center, where I explained to you how she denied access to the Black community to good health care. So she's someone that's done a lot of jobs and is very capable. I mean, she's a better politician than Barack. She's a better speaker. She comes from a political family. Her father was a politician, a precinct captain in Chicago. Michelle grew up in Jesse Jackson's house. She was best friends with his daughter Santita when Jackson was running for president. Michelle marries a politician, so she's very political. And as First Lady, she ran a number of initiatives and put in the time. So I don't think that's a real story that somehow she doesn't like to work hard. She's highly motivated by politics. Like Barack, she's a political animal. That's all she thinks about is politics. You can look at her Twitter account. It's all politics all the time. And I think Michelle would love to be president. And these phony stories that she doesn't like to work hard or she doesn't like politics, those are all cover stories so that she can present herself to the country very much like what she said when she introduced Joe Biden. It was the same. She's going to use the same line. When she introduced Joe Biden in 2020 at the convention, she said, I hate politics, but I love this nation and I love your children. So I think when she joins, that's what she's going to say. Well, I hate politics, but I love this nation. I love your children. She's going to do us all a favor and bring us back together again.
Right.
The same thing that Barack said in 2008.
Joel, just kind of playing, looking at the playing field here, the scorecard of this. What do the Democrats do with Kamala Harris? How does this play in?
Well, there's a big misconception in the media mostly that Kamala Harris has any support whatsoever. There's also a misconception that she's African American, which she's not.
Right.
Kamala's mother's from India, her father's from Jamaica. She's not African American. Kamala grew up in Canada, not the United States. She married a white Jewish guy. So she has no connection to the Black community of any experiences, of any history, nothing. She has no support. So Kamala, I believe, is completely irrelevant. She has no support. She's done nothing in the office of vice president to gain any support. So just forget about Kamala. I don't think anyone is going to care. Not dissimilar to 2016 when Hillary was running. Nobody cared about Joe Biden and said, oh, Biden, what about Biden? Nobody even thought about it.
We'll come back. We'll finish the Rick and Bubba University podcast. Our guest today is Joel Gilbert. Our conversation continues right after this. Patriot Mobile, we all the time on the show, we hear this, boycott this, and we ought to do that. And a lot of times when you get to the point, you go, well, I do need a wireless provider. Where do y'all want me to go? Well, Patriot Mobile says now you actually have a choice, and you have access to the same 3 major networks, which means you get the same coverage you've been accustomed to, but the difference is you won't be funding the left. Patriot Mobile is the only conservative Christian wireless provider, and they're here to give you great service, incredible coverage, without all the baggage. If you want to switch, they make it really, really easy. All you have to do is go to patriotmobile.com/RickBubba. Just put our names together, patriotmobile.com/RickBubba, or you can call 972-PATRIOT. That gets you free activation. If you want to keep your same number, that's fine. If you want to keep your same phone, that's fine. But if you want to upgrade, their completely U.S.-based customer service team will help you do that as well and find the plan that is perfect for you. Wonderful service without funding the left. Make the switch now at patriotmobile.com/RickBubba. Joel Gilbert is our guest. We're discussing Michelle Obama. This is the expert. He has proven that and has done the research. I want to ask you, Joel, a question about the research. You said and have said in your book and documentary, she's not a sure thing because of all the baggage. Some of it you laid out here on the podcast. But here's my question to you from a Republican strategy. We know, if any of them go after the things that you have mentioned, the next thing you're going to hear is these things are not to be considered. These things are being said about this black woman because these people are all racist. Can you do the campaign to reveal her for what she really is and get through this same old, it's not a new strategy. They did it with Barack. You couldn't question him. If you did, you were racist. How do you get around that from a strategic standpoint?
Okay, there's no question that the media would love to have Michelle Obama running because they can then oppose and criticize anyone who doesn't agree with her,
right,
as insinuate, well, they must be racist or they don't like that there's a woman candidate. They can try to do that.
Yeah, you got a double hit this time.
Yeah, but black voters are actually very much down to earth, and they like to hear the truth of what's going on, and they will not like it when they hear that Michelle sold them out. Michelle made millions from white liberals. When they had problems with the black community and needed someone to do the dirty work, Michelle Obama was their go-to person. And a black voter will be very interested to know about that because they don't like to get sold out, especially by someone from their own community who claims they were part of their community. But I've got Michelle on tape. She said she was afraid to go out of her house because the black kids would beat her up. They called her an Oreo. Michelle had no black friends. She gets jobs in Chicago, kicking black people out of their homes and denying them access to good health care. Those are things that the black community will be very interested and shocked to find out about because Michelle has been promoting and working very hard for years to manipulate black voters with these phony stories that she's an ordinary person from the south side of Chicago and I'm just like one of you. And I think they would be very interested and very shocked to know this, despite the fact that the media might say, well, it's because of race. No, these are just facts. It's just a fact. You can look at Michelle's book, Becoming, her autobiography. She doesn't talk one bit about kicking black people out of their homes and knocking down their houses. She doesn't talk about denying them access to health care. She papers over her history to try to create a false story. And I think it's something that can be effective, very much so, because the core voting group of Democrats is getting that 95% of the black vote to get their people elected. Now, they've hemorrhaged those to Donald Trump quite a bit, and I think the Democrats think Michelle can bring it back. There is a short window because I think Michelle will only be running for president for 4 months, from late August up till November. And that's the time that this information has to get out there, and the media will try very hard to protect Michelle Obama.
Joel, let me back up, same topic, but pull it back to 50,000 feet. Was the 2020 election stolen? And if so, how was it stolen?
I believe there's a massive amount of evidence that the swing states were controlled by Democrat organizations, Democrat voting groups. The 5 or 6 counties in 5 or 6 swing states were able to manipulate the vote. Mail-in voting here in California, 22 million ballots are sent out. It's impossible to know who fills them out or who stuffs them in these drop boxes. So the idea that between 2016 and 2020 that we had a 20% increase in voter turnout. Usually voter turnout increases by 1% between elections. They had a 20% increase between 16 and 20, and all those extra people all voted for Biden. I mean, I was watching TV and Trump was ahead on all the states, and they stopped counting the ballots, and 6 hours later they started counting again and Biden got all the votes. So between mail-in voting and drop boxes and the ridiculous 20% increase, there's a massive amount of evidence that the Democrat Party and their allies prepared for that scenario and executed a scenario to put a very unpopular former Vice President Joe Biden in his basement, give him 81 million votes, 16 million more votes than Barack Obama had, that this guy was so popular after a very successful Trump presidency. I think there's every bit of evidence that Biden was installed, and since he's been installed, they've covered up his infirmity, and there are other people running the office of the president with Biden as a mere figurehead.
So let me follow up on that. The numbers are suspicious.
Yeah.
But there was no
implausible.
Yeah.
Implausible.
Well, there was never any prosecutable evidence, I guess is the term I'm looking for. With all the judges, all the federal courts, all that, how come that there couldn't get one case to stick that could have held up certification till it was looked into? And it just looks to me, Joel, because, you know, it's not one big election, it's 50 little elections. And it looks like it would be hard to steal an election, but yet, as you said, the big numbers in this look very suspicious.
Yeah, look, the courts have traditionally been terrified to deal with electoral matters. So every court that it was brought before are just dying not to have to deal with it. Right. They're looking for any excuse whatsoever. So
jurisdiction,
like when Texas,
or something like that.
Yeah. When Texas brought it to the Supreme Court said, oh, well, we don't want to get involved in elections and we don't want to take responsibility for it. And so they rejected it. So every court was just terrified to deal with it, knowing that a mob might show up at your house and start screaming and protesting and burn your house down. So I think the judiciary was intimidated, and it was made clear to the judiciary that they shouldn't look at any of these cases seriously. No case was ever brought, not because there wasn't merit, but because the courts were terrified to deal with any election-related matter.
So are you telling us, and I know it's...
And by the way, let me point out, they followed that up with prosecuting every attorney that ever gave Trump advice about what you can do to contest an election. All those attorneys were disbarred or charged with crimes. So that's part of the process to make sure in the future that nobody dares question the election results, and no attorney would dare advise anyone to question election results.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of strange, even with Cohen and some of those when their offices were raided. You really never see attorneys, for lack of a better term, put on trial for them representing somebody, and that's what we saw in this.
Well, not only that, you get disbarred, you lose your license. John Eastman, Giuliani, just if you gave advice, you could be charged with a crime. So don't expect that don't expect too many people to question the 2024 results, because you're going to have a very tough time finding a lawyer. There's a lot of election attorneys in this country, but you're not going to find one that's willing to advise any candidate that there was any problem, because they know their entire practice is going to be under attack.
Well, that's what was strange to me, because your attorney usually in a case will go out to the media, and they will verbalize their client's case, their client's claim. They'll try to not only win the case in the courthouse, but win the court of public opinion. And these attorneys were prosecuted for saying the things they said.
Look, the bigger picture is Donald Trump not being part of the establishment, who came from a grassroots movement and grassroots organization, disrupted the flow of how things are supposed to work in Washington. Everything from NATO funding to the relationship with China to foreign wars, you name it. And the powers that be that controlled those things, that felt that Trump would disrupt them, sought to undermine his presidency during the term of his presidency, sought to make sure they put him down in terms of all these crazy lawsuits and criminal charges against him for things that were not even crimes, in order to maintain their power. I think that Joe Biden served a certain purpose as a figurehead, and now that it's been completely exposed that they can no longer function plausibly with him as a figurehead, nor win an election with him as the figurehead, that it just won't seem plausible, they're willing to replace him. That's the bigger picture of what's going on. And these prosecutions of attorneys and disbarring them for questioning them is just a small part of the bigger picture.
Well, the beauty, too, in this very party that did all the things both of you have discussed, only the Democrats, and they're masters of it, then they point to Trump and say, this is the guy you got to watch.
He's a threat to democracy.
He's a threat to democracy.
Now, he hasn't locked up anybody or prosecuted anybody.
He'll weaponize the government agencies against you. He'll weaponize the branches against you while they do that very thing. They're masters of that.
Well, it's not their masters. This is like Soviet speak. This is how it was in the Soviet Union, where everything was opposite world. I went to Soviet Union in 1984. I visited families that were trying to leave the Soviet Union when I was a student. And they were translating the news for me on Pravda, and everything was opposite. Everything was just backwards. And they were reading Pravda. I said, why are you reading the Pravda? You just told me everything was backwards. They're reading the newspaper, a Russian propaganda tool for the Communist Party. And they said, oh, well, we read Pravda because we know whatever we read, the opposite is true.
Yeah, right.
And that's how we get our news. We read and we think, what is the opposite? So that's the style of governance that you have from the press secretary and much of the media. They say things that are completely absurd, and that's how they roll. It really is a throwback to the Communist Party of the Soviet Union.
No doubt. We'll come back. We'll have a few more minutes visiting with our guest today, Joel Gilbert, when Rick and Bubba University, the podcast, continues right after this. Some of you, as we're talking right now, Bubba, right now, our voices are right in someone's ear, and they've got everyday earbuds from Raycon.
Oh, I know.
Do you realize right now?
Sounding good.
Testing 1 2 Raycon test.
Check.
If you have not upgraded to everyday earbuds from Raycon, it's time. And now they've even upgraded their everyday earbuds. They're better now than ever. And these new vibrant colors that you'll love. So they look cool. They have the discreet fit with the customized gel tip. That's still there, by the way. But they've added a few things. They got a quick charge function. 10 minutes of charging gives you 90 minutes of battery. Ergonomic design comfortably fits the widest range of ears. Also, the multi-point connectivity is there. You can do two at the same time. The awareness mode's still there, but new active noise cancellation. That's new. Still have the 3 customizable sound styles, but new weatherproof and sweat resistant is now been added. That's even better than ever now, so it can withstand a lot more. They're about half the price of the other premium audio brands, so you love that. But because you're listening to Rick and Bubba University, the podcast, here comes another 15% and free shipping. We love these. The way they fit is wonderful. The way they sound. I mean, to me, I'm very sensitive to the sound. With the sound profiles, if I'm decided I'm listening to, maybe Rick and Bubba, then I got one sound profile. But if I want to get in there and get the music happening, Bubba, we need a little thump, I just go to the other one.
Got a jam.
And they sound so good. And if you are moving around or you're exercising, they don't come out. I love that. BuyRaycon.com/RickBubbaPod. We love them. You will too. Get 15% off plus free shipping. That's BuyRaycon.com/RickBubbaPod. So here we are. We got a few more minutes with Joel Gilbert. He is the author of Michelle Obama 2024, Her Real Life Story and Plan for Power, director of the documentary Michelle Obama 2024, and he has been warning for over a year that the plan has always been Michelle Obama in 2024.
Joel, I've got to ask you this, because if we don't, we're going to get email about it. And hey, Bubba,
I'll tell you what. Let me stop you right there. I know what you're going to ask, and here's a picture of Michelle Obama in dance class in high school in 1978. She's 16 years old. She's obviously female. Now, what happened is Joan Rivers is a comedian, and somebody asked Joan Rivers from TMZ, will we ever have a gay president? Now, she made a joke, which was, well, we already have a gay president, Obama, and Michelle's transgender. Now, that was a joke.
Okay.
She's a comedian, and the internet picked up on that joke because Michelle had gotten 15 years of all positive publicity. No one ever criticized her. So I think people picked up on that and made it a big joke. Is Michelle a dude? I can assure you Michelle is not a man. She's always been female. Now, she's a total phony because she's someone that manipulated the black community her whole life, who treated them poorly, exploited and abused black people on behalf of white liberals. She's a phony, but she's 100% female, and showing that the fact that she's somebody that had a terrible relationship with the black community and tried to harm them is the key to defeating her. And the idea that she's not female is just a silly joke.
All right, there it is. We got that. All right.
Yeah, well, thank you for getting the lead on that, because we would have been beat up unmercifully if we had not at least addressed it.
So let's look to strategy again, okay? So we know right now that Trump, you talked about hemorrhage a little bit, most of that appears to be, correct me if this is wrong, but what's being reported is most of that seems to be black males. They're seeing the cost of things. They don't like how things are going. They identify a little bit with Trump. There's something masculine there. They like the way he leads. They don't like the state of the economy.
The style that he rolls with,
right? But
appeals to a lot of people.
Black women still seems to be an issue. Do they listen to these things you know about Michelle Obama? Do you bring them around as well?
A couple of issues are going on here. First of all, black community has been manipulated for many years with phony stories of Republicans and Trump being racist to try to inflame them.
Right.
I made a movie called The Trayvon Hoax about the Trayvon Martin case, showing how that was manipulated by Barack Obama, the Justice Department. They put up a fake witness. Rachel Jeantel was not Trayvon Martin's girlfriend. She was not on the phone with him. I found the real girlfriend named Diamond Eugene, and she refused to lie to the police. And that's why they got a fake witness. And that was when Obama, it looked like he might not win re-election. So they tried to use that case to inflame the black community with phony charges of racism that, you could be shot down on the street at any time by a white person. So you got to vote for Obama. The Obamas ruined race relations in this country. 70% of both blacks and whites thought race relations were good when Obama was elected as the first biracial or black president. When they left office, it flipped. Everybody thought only 30% felt it was positive because the Obamas ruined race relations, inflamed people, used phony stories of racism to keep power because they're both very insecure. Obama's biracial. He grew up in Hawaii. He never really knew any black people and never had any experience with the black people. Same thing with Michelle Obama. she had nothing to do with the black community. They beat the hell out of her growing up. She was afraid of them and ran away from them and then exploited them. So they tried to use race to keep power, and that certainly is something the black community has been subject to for 50 years. So the black males kind of have overcome that. I think black females are no fools either. I think they see that they had a good thing going under Trump. They had school choice, empowerment zones, a great economy that benefited everybody. So I think the black community will vote for Trump, more so than not, maybe as much as half. And but again, they're looking for Michelle to kind of bring them back into line.
Right.
And I think she's coming, and I think you're going to have all these same phony stories of racism out of the mouth of Michelle Obama to inflame the black community, because it's been a successful formula for them.
It is kind of ironic, Joel, if you think about it, and being from our state, we've seen this technique before that the first black president, Barack Obama, and now Michelle Obama are kind of pulling a George Wallace, so to speak, by running his wife when he termed out.
Well, this was something that, Hillary Clinton kind of pioneered the idea.
Right.
Don't forget the Bushes did it too. The son of the former president, kind of keep it in the family. It's something that's not really original, but Michelle is just so popular. She's a pop culture phenomenon. She's got 100 million social media followers. She can send out one tweet and control the entire media narrative. She can fill up stadiums. I went to a YouTube theater here in Los Angeles on her book tour, and you had to buy a ticket. You don't get in. You had to buy a ticket for $50-$80. I went there 3 hours in advance thinking I would kind of relax and talk to a few people. Even though they had tickets, people were lined up for miles, and they were just screaming for Michelle. So she has that pop culture power, and she will be a formidable foe, and the Democrats know that. I don't think half the Democrats and more now are calling for Biden to drop out if they didn't know that they have someone who can come in and defeat Trump.
3 minutes. How do they put her in with 3 minutes to go?
I think Biden's going to drop out at some point. I mean, they made the convention in Chicago, of all places, Michelle's hometown, for for a homegirl convention. I mean, so he can drop out any time before the convention for any number of reasons. Could be health, could be doctor's diagnosis, anything. And the party will turn to Michelle, who will reluctantly say, I love this country. I don't like politics, but I want to bring us all back together again. And by the way, you can watch the movie if you go to MichelleObama24.com. You can see the trailer, and that'll hook you up, or you can link up to SalemNow.com or Amazon Prime Video to watch the movie. And then the book version and DVD are on Amazon.com. So go to MichelleObama24.com for all the information.
Joel, we
gotta get ready.
Yeah, we've heard that the President Biden can release his delegates at the convention if he decides to drop out. But what about these states that already have ballots printed that cannot be reprinted, according to what we're reading in the news?
It's not a problem. They'll reprint anything and everything to accommodate the extraordinary situation that the president had to resign for health reasons or had to say he's not running again. They'll make it work. It won't be a problem to substitute her in.
Well, thank you for all the research that you've been doing, because it's going to take this, Joel. You talked about it. We did. We know what they're going to do. It's the same thing they've always done. You're right. I don't want to do this, but the state of the country, I have to do this. If you oppose me, you're not only misogynist, you're racist. And if you don't have the research and people are not ready to refute her claims, then they're just going to roll. So thank you for all the research that you've done and making it available. Tell them one more time where to get all of it.
Yeah, go to MichelleObama24.com for the book or the film, or live stream the movie on Amazon Prime Video or SalemNow.com.
Thank you, Joel Gilbert, for taking time to be with us, and we're going to watch and see if this all plays out exactly like you've been telling us it's going to.
Yeah, we may have to have you back.
Yeah. So we may have to revisit this. So thanks a lot for taking time to be with us.
Okay, thank you so much.
And thanks to each and every one of you for being with us on this edition. Bubba, we'll continue to follow this on The Big Show, too. If you're not familiar with that, just go to rickandbubba.com. Thanks for being with us on this edition of Rick and Bubba University, the podcast.